Hi, welcome to this week's Mondays with Mike. I'm Mike, and it's Monday, so got a lot on the agenda today. Really do. A lot of things I want to talk to you about. Got a great question that we're going to talk about. This was from Nancy, who was asking about why sometimes the sky looks yellow. Why does it get that yellow hue to it, yellow glow? So that is going to be up. We're also going to talk about the 3-second bicep workout. Going to get stronger in 3 seconds a day. Also, on the science front, the James Webb Telescope. This is like the successor to the Hubble telescope. It's going to give us a great view of some of the deepest reaches of space. And we're going to talk about what a Lagrange point is. Where do they put the satellite? How does it stay there? And a couple interesting things. The safest driving song. They've actually studied this. What's the safest song to play while you're driving? And finally, we're going to talk about rodeo season and cowboy hats. All of that coming up right now. All right, so the first item that I want to talk about is a question that I got from Nancy from Missouri City, who asked, why is there sometimes a yellow hue during sunset? I've tried to catch it on camera. Everything's yellow. Well, that's a great question, and I've noticed it too. We talk about it in the house, and my daughter's actually, I'd never heard this term before. My daughter said, it's the golden hour. It's the golden hour. And I'd never really heard of that, but I knew that it looked golden, but I didn't know that it actually had a name and that it was a thing. So what happens is, and this could happen at sunrise also, I don't know why it's more noticeable at sunset, but it turns out that, the reason that everything kind of turns that golden color is the same reason why the sky is blue. You know, the fact that the sunlight contains all of the colors of the rainbow. And for most of the day, it's the blue light that's scattered the most because the blue light actually has the shortest wavelength. But as the sun gets lower in the sky, it has to pass through more of the atmosphere. And so it gradually, before it sets, you start to get more of the yellow color that comes out. Remember the colors of the rainbow? It's Roy G. Biv, right? Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and then violet. So the sky is blue, so you change from blue, and the next thing is green, and that's really difficult to see. And if it does turn green, it'll be really brief, but you will notice the yellow. And then as the sun sets, it'll turn orange and red and then set. And that's actually just all of the colors of the rainbow coming out. But during this golden hour, I was doing some reading about this, Nancy, and when the conditions are just right and you get that yellow golden hue coming from the light, it's apparently very revered by photographers. That's the time of day when, if you're going to use natural daylight, you get the best pictures. Because think about trying to take a picture. If you're trying to take a picture of somebody, and it's the middle of the day, and it's sunny, and it's bright, then the people are like this, right? And you have these harsh shadows, and it's too bright. It's like too bright white. And the pictures don't usually turn out very well. But if you were to get it during that golden hour, during that time, maybe it's 30 minutes before sunset, maybe it's 40 minutes before sunset, when the atmosphere is scattering out that yellow light instead of just the blue, it's much softer. The shadows are softer. Everything looks prettier. And you could really take some nice pictures. In fact, if you look online and you look at golden hour pictures, and I'll put some the pictures up here too as examples, it really is kind of a neat effect. And it got me to thinking too that if you've ever bought light bulbs recently, which you probably have, when you go to the store now with LED bulbs, they are rated by, it'll say, do you want cool white? Do you want bright white? Do you want daylight? Do you want warm light? They're all labeled that way. And it gets to be a real pain in the butt, because if you have, 20 different light bulbs in your house, or probably more, if you accidentally buy some of them cool white and some of them warm, then the warm ones look yellow and the cool ones look white, or bright white or blue, and it's annoying. And it could be, it annoys me. Some people it doesn't. So the warm light bulbs would be the equivalent of the golden hour. because you're getting more yellow light. The blue and the bright white ones would be the equivalent of like the afternoon sunshine. You're getting bright white light. And, okay, if you look on the label, they'll be labeled in a number ending in K. So it'll say 3000 K or 4000 K or 5000 K or a lower number like 2300 K. That is based on a temperature, Kelvin. Okay, the surface of the sun is about 5500 K. So it emits that bright white light. And if you get a 55K light bulb, that's what you're going to get, is a really bright white light that makes everything very bright, but it's also kind of harsh on your eyes. If you want something that's less harsh, that's a little bit warmer, then you go for the lower temperature. So 3000K would be less harsh. 2000K would be much more yellow, which some people like. I like it. Some people can't stand it. Like my daughters, I tried to put warm light in their bedrooms. They didn't like it at all. So they wanted me to switch it to the bright light. But that's really what the golden hour is all about, is filtering out so that you get more of the warm yellow light of the rainbow coming through. And in order to do that, the sun has to be low in the sky where it passes through more of the atmosphere. And then when it gets low to the ground, then that's when it starts to look red and pink, because you're getting near that other end of the spectrum of the rainbow. So that is actually a really neat thing, Nancy. And I actually learned that this golden hour is really a thing. Like, it's really a thing for photographers especially. Okay, next thing I wanted to talk to you guys about here on this Monday is, and you may have heard this story, so some researchers in Australia and in Japan, they tested, okay, so this is called the 3-second bicep workout, which sounds ridiculous, but what they tested was they took several different groups and they tested them. They had a control group of people who were not working out, okay? Then they had the exercise group, and they were then separated into people who were going to do a full bicep curl, not like this, standing up, right? So a full curl, you're holding the dumbbell down, you bring it up, which is called the concentric part of the lift, and then you bring it back down. So they had some people did that. They had some of the people, I think, only did the concentric part. And some people did the isometric, which is where you just hold it. You're just holding the weight there. You're not moving. And then they had people that started with the weight up high and then lowered the weight. And what those Australian and Japanese researchers found is that the most effective part of the lift was the eccentric, where you're holding the weight and then you lower it. And what they found is that if you do that for 3 seconds, they had people do it 3 seconds a day, one lift. I guess you have 2 arms, that would be 6 seconds. I don't know. 3 seconds a day, 5 days a week, and no weekends. So you're basically doing it like 20 days in a month, 5 days a week, for 4 weeks. It's a total of 60 seconds, 1 minute in a month, okay? 3 seconds times 20 days, 1 minute. And what they found is that there was a gain in strength of about 12%. So, which is not a ton, but if you could curl 30 pounds, on the dumbbells, now you could do 33. I guess there's something to be said for that, and it's only 3 seconds a day. Not 3 minutes a day, 3 seconds a day. I don't know. It might be an interesting experiment to try it and see what happens. What they didn't say, though, in the study that I saw is whether or not it works for other muscle groups, because they only tested the bicep. Can you do a 3-second squat? Can you do a 3-second bench press? I don't know. So, as we always say on the morning news, especially on Wake Up with Sally Mack and Lena, more research is needed. All right, moving on now. On the science front, so one of the exciting things that's happened in recent weeks is that the James Webb Telescope, this is the successor to the Hubble Space Telescope. The The James Webb Telescope is now in orbit and it is operational. And I learned a lot about this. This thing is, well, first of all, there's things that go into the satellite that you don't even think about it until you really start to read about it. Like, for example, where do you put the satellite, right? We have lots of satellites. And some of them, like the ones we use to look at clouds and things like that, are called geosynchronous satellites. So, you have the Earth, and the Earth spins around once a day, once every 24 hours, and you want the satellite to also spin once every 24 hours so that it stays over the same part of the Earth. So you have the satellite looking at the same spot every day. It doesn't move, more than a little bit. So that's geosynchronous. And then we have all these other satellites, like the GPS satellites, and we also have these called polar orbiting satellites. Those things are much lower, and they orbit the Earth several times a day. So instead of orbiting once per day like the geosynchronous, they might orbit 10 times a day. Then you have the International Space Station, and when the space shuttle is up there, and they'll go around every 90 minutes or something like that. So there are a lot of different orbits that things could be placed in. Now, when you have a telescope, a space telescope, you want it to be pointing in one direction, right? You don't want it to be spinning around all the time. You also, and this is something I'd never thought of, is that the side of the telescope or any spacecraft that you have out there, any satellite or anything, the side that's facing the sun gets very hot. And the side that's facing space gets very cold. And so this thing runs on solar power. And so it has this array of solar panels, and you want those to always face the sun. You don't want it to be spinning around. Like if it orbited the Earth, half the time it would get no sunlight. So they want the solar panels to always face the sun, and they want the camera to, what? Always face into outer space, right? So how do you do that? Well, there was a 19th century mathematician by the name of Lagrange. And he calculated here that there are 5 points that are now called the Lagrange points, but it has to do with what's called a three-body orbit. Okay, so you have the sun, you have the Earth, and you have this telescope, or it could be anything. Okay, it could be an asteroid. But if it's placed in any one of these 5 spots that you see here, if you place it in any one of these 5 spots, it will orbit as a group, okay, along with the Earth, okay, and it'll stay in that place. So there's a spot between the Earth and the sun, a Lagrange point, and that one is where we place solar observing satellites, solar observing telescopes. We place them there because they're always going to be between the Earth and the sun, always. This Webb Space Telescope, we put it on the other Lagrange point that's on the other side of the Earth, where it's always got its back to the sun and its face, facing towards space. There are also Lagrange points that could be sort of on the side of the Earth in our orbit, and that way it'll keep going around the sun with the Earth. It's not going to just fly off into space, but it's where we want it, and it's not going to orbit the Earth per se. It's not going to keep going around the Earth. It's going to go around the sun along with us. So I thought that was really, really cool. Now, some of the first pictures from the James Webb Space Telescope are coming in, and I looked at it. I don't know what to make of it. It looked like a bunch of bright spots to me, a bunch of stars, and so anyway, I'm sure once the astronomers take a close look at it, they're going to realize that this thing is so powerful that they can pick any point in space, and the tiniest point, the tiniest little point that you can imagine that looks black to you, and they can examine that tiniest point in space, and they are going to be able to see within that galaxies, not just stars, but distant galaxies, all in that tiny little space, because space is so vast. And anyway, it's going to be pretty awesome. Okay, finally. Oh, no, not finally. There's one other thing I wanted to say before finally. Okay, I came across this other study that I thought was really weird, but I wanted to share it with you. And it has to do with the safest song to play while you're in the car. Okay, the safest song and the least safe song. So this has to do with what kind of music can you play that would be the least distracting for you while you're driving. Okay, and the winner was Bad Guy by Billie Eilish. Because I guess it's a really low-key song, right? I like it. It's a really good song, but I guess it just has that kind of smoothness to it that it's not going to distract you from driving. The most distracting song was Hey Ya by Outkast. I don't know. These are the scientists that come up with this stuff. And finally, I wanted to talk about this. It is almost rodeo time in Houston. This hat is 22 years old, and I wear it once a year. If they send me to the rodeo, I wear it. That's it. People tell me that I am, what do they say? I'm all hat and no cattle. I think that's what they say. You're all hat and no cattle. That kind of thing. I learned a lot about cowboy hats when I moved to Texas. This here hat is a 2X hat. That means it is not an expensive hat. A lot of people don't know this. Well, this is made out of wool, okay, which is not an expensive material. Some of these, the real expensive hats, some of these guys have like $1,000 hats. And they're made out of, well, they can be made out of a lot of things, but I think traditionally they were made out of pelts, like beaver pelts or other animal pelts. And the X was how many pelts it took to make that hat. So like if you have an 8X hat, or I don't know where it goes beyond that, 12X or 16X or whatever it is, it took that many pelts of whatever animal it was, I think beaver, there's other things, to make that hat, which means that the higher number you get, the more special or chosen, like it's the filet mignon or whatever of that coat of the poor animal, okay, that was used to make the hat. So the more it took, the higher the quality is, I suppose, and the more expensive the hat. So, 2X hat is inexpensive, and then you get up to the, whatever, the 20X or something, and they're like $2,000 or more. So there's a lot of things you learn, I guess, over the years being at the rodeo. So maybe we'll talk about that in more detail on next week's Monday with Mike, because I've learned a lot about how that livestock show works, and the breeders and the people, what they get out of the bull, which is a little bit embarrassing to talk about, but we'll talk about that maybe next time around. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's segment. Also, by the way, sorry, before we go, I had the hat like that before, and that tells you that you're all hat and no cattle, because a real cowboy puts his hat like that. I also learned that. Put your hat like that, they know that you know what you're doing and you're from Texas. Put your hat like that, they know that you just went to Boot Barn and just bought yourself a hat. So, pro tip. All right. So that'll do it for this week's edition of Mondays with Mike. As always, I want to ask if you liked what I said, or you thought it was amusing or funny or anything, please click the little thumbs up or the like or whatever at the bottom of the screen, and go ahead and leave a comment. If you have any questions that you want featured here, you can just send them right here, either on my Facebook page or on YouTube, if they allow comments. I'm not sure. And maybe I will get to your question like I did Nancy's. So, and maybe I'll learn something like I did from Nancy's question. So, thanks for tuning in. See you on the air.